Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and it's been a couple days since Apple introduced the all-new iPad Pro M4 and new iPad Air with the M2 processor, and there's some details they left out, so I thought we'd go over 10 of them. Now, the first thing is Apple is no longer referring to iPads with a generation marker, meaning that this is no longer the 7th generation iPad Pro, it's just the iPad Pro 13-inch with the new one. So it's called iPad Pro, we have iPad Air, and Apple is sort of keeping the same naming scheme that they have with the MacBooks. So we have MacBook Air, MacBook Pro in different sizes. This makes a lot of sense with the iPad since we've had it for quite some time. Maybe they'll do that with the iPhone in the future, but at this point, it's just something I thought I'd point out as it's just the iPad Pro and pick the size. The next thing is, depending on where you live, Apple may not include a charger. In the European Union and the UK, Apple will not be including a charger in the box. Everywhere else, they'll include a 20-watt adapter. While it can charge at a faster rate, the 20-watt adapter is what's included. It's basically what they'll recommend, and it comes with a new black cable with the Pro models. And in general, if you get the space black one, but in general, it's just the regular charger we've had for a while. But if you want to charge it a little bit faster, you can with a different charger. But that's just something I thought I'd point out that has to do with European Union laws and sort of packaging things separately. The battery in the new iPads gives the same battery life that we've had all along, but the actual battery size themselves is slightly smaller. For example, in the 13-inch, it's 38.99 watt-hours compared to 40.88 watt-hours in the current 6th-gen iPad Pro 12.9-inch that I have here. So it is slightly smaller, but with a more efficient M4 chip, you should get the same battery life. 10 hours for regular use, 9 hours for the cellular and Wi-Fi version, browsing the web. So very, very similar, but it's just something they haven't increased battery size, they've decreased it and used that efficiency to make it thinner. Now, as far as the overall design details, a couple things I wanted to mention. With the cellular models like we have here, we have a SIM card tray. That's something they've removed on the brand new iPads. They've actually gotten rid of it entirely and switched to eSIM only. So if you travel a lot, this could be a huge pain, just like it is with the iPhones. And even outside the US, it looks like none of them have physical SIM card slots. So they're all eSIM if you plan to use them with cellular. It's something that I think they shouldn't have done, but it looks like they're moving forward with that in more locations. Also with the cellular models, there's no longer a millimeter wave antenna. So of course we have our little spot for the pencil on the side, but on the other side here, where is it? On the top, we have the millimeter wave antenna. They've removed that on the new iPad Pro and iPad Air. Basically in the United States or other places that support millimeter wave, this just doesn't seem to make a big enough difference. Mostly it's just Verizon, and you have to be basically within line of sight for this to work really well. That may disappoint some, but most people are just on regular speeds, and you can get 1 gigabit per second, or maybe even faster depending on where you live. So you can get that without millimeter wave now, so maybe there's just no need for it. It also adds the overall thickness possibly, and it's just something they didn't need to include, it seems. With the new iPad Pro models, you can order an all-new nano texture display. It's very similar to what we have on a Pro Display XDR and Studio Display, and it helps reduce the overall reflections, as you can see here in a very bright environment. That would be great, but it does come at a slight cost. One of them is that it reduces overall sort of sharpness of the display and some saturation, it seems, but it looks great, and if you want to use it in a bright environment, it definitely helps. But it's only available for the 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte options. Apple has not made it available for 256 or 512 options, so you'll have to pay a lot of money just to get the nano texture display. So you'll have to opt for the 1 terabyte plus an additional $100 to get the nano texture. It's also questionable as far as how well it will hold up, as far as cleaning it and scratches. And one other detail I haven't seen mentioned is the overall bezel is glossy compared to the display itself. It's a nice design touch, but it looks like just over the OLED display is where it has the nano texture, but on the bezels it doesn't. That could help reduce overall scratches or maybe show scratches, but that's something that I don't think I've seen pointed out too many places, so it's just one thing I thought I'd note. Now with the iPad Air, this display is basically the same thing we had before, a liquid retina display, but there's an odd change here if you opt for the 13-inch model. So if you go for the 13-inch model over the 11-inch model, it actually has a little bit more of a brighter display. from 500 nits on the 11-inch to 600 nits on the 13-inch. So that's something that they've changed. They didn't point out. And also it does have Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 thanks to the M2 chipset. So that's on the iPad Air. Apple did remove something on the iPad Pro I think many of us didn't expect. They removed one of the camera options, so we no longer have the ultra-wide camera on the new iPad Pro, and instead we just have the regular camera and then an additional sensor, which is believed to sort of be an ambient light sensor to help with taking pictures of documents using the all-new flash update. So that's something that should be great. You have that True Tone flash, or a flash to make it a little bit more accurate and reduce some of the glare, or process some of that glare out of the photo on the new iPad Pro if you're using it for document scanning. So that's a small detail, but something I thought I'd mention. Now, if you already have an Apple Pencil 2, you unfortunately will not be able to use this with the new iPad Pro or iPad Air. Apple has made it so that you need an Apple Pencil Pro to use it on the new devices. Now, I'm sure some of this has to do with the landscape camera, as they said it has an all-new pairing and charging setup. That's probably to fit the landscape camera on the side, but it's odd that they just couldn't use the same one and put it on the other side of the display. Even though that would be less convenient and sort of be at the bottom, it definitely would make compatibility a little bit better. So now we have 4 Apple Pencils available, and the Apple Pencil Pro, while it has some very nice features and costs the same price, is the only one you can use on the new iPads. With the iPad Pro, Apple has moved to 4 studio mics now instead of 5. This may be due to the camera's location no longer maybe needing the additional mics to cancel out some noise, but of course I'll have to test that out once it's available. But they've reduced the overall microphones. Maybe they just didn't have room for it due to the overall thinness of the new iPad, or they just didn't need it. But again, we'll test that out a little bit later. One of the things I'm looking most forward to is the new Magic Keyboard. The new aluminum topped Magic Keyboard is something that I think will make it much nicer to use, but one of the things I wanted to mention is that the iPad Air does not support the new keyboard, but rather supports the old keyboard. So that's good news if you have maybe an iPad Pro laying around, an older one that you don't want to use, and you want to get a new iPad Air, but you have a Magic Keyboard and you could use that. But unfortunately, the new iPad Pro requires the new Magic Keyboard. You cannot use the current one with the new iPad Pro. That makes a lot of sense as they've changed a lot of things in it. They've added that function row, but the outside of it appears to be sort of this same material that's silicone or sort of a rubberized material, and the inside has the aluminum keyboard and trackpad area. So that's something I can't wait to see, and it also says it's a haptic trackpad. So I don't know if it has a motor in it or they're just talking about the click itself that's already built in, but that's something I can't wait to try out. It is very expensive at $300 or $350, but it's something you'll have to buy on the new iPad Pro models, but the iPad Air supports the older one. One of the surprising things this week is that Apple introduced the new iPad Pro with the M4 chipset. They skipped the M3 altogether and instead included the M4. And the new M4 has a couple details you should know about if you're ordering an iPad Pro. The first thing has to do with the core count. You'll see here when we're comparing the M4, it says up to 10 core. The 256 and 512 variant only have 9 core CPUs. That may or may not make a huge difference, but it's something worth noting. Also, the 256 and 512 models have 8 gigs of RAM, similar to what we have now, where the 1TB and 2TB have a 10-core CPU and 16 gigs of RAM. They also did say that the M4 is 50% faster than the M2, but they didn't mention the M3 at all, since it's probably not that big of a jump. Some benchmarks have come out showing that it is a little bit of a bump with the multi-core scores, but we don't know what that means in real-life use, as the iPad basically has Final Cut and Logic Pro, and there's not a ton of advanced apps that really take advantage of that just yet, so we'll have to wait and see what that's all about. The final detail I wanted to share has to do with the Apple Pencil Pro and the iPad Pro packaging. The Apple Pencil Pro actually comes in many different boxes. You don't know which one you're going to get, and they can look different, similar to the Let Loose logo that they have. They have that drawn on the top of the box, so you can see that here from X or Twitter. Also, the iPad Pro no longer includes Apple stickers in the box. This is to meet Apple's environmental goals, but it's something that I think is a bit sad, as many people really love getting the stickers, especially if they match the different devices. So those are 10 plus details about the new iPad Pro and iPad Air, and hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what they're all about. Of course, we'll have to get our hands on one, see what they're all about, try them out for ourselves, compare them, and much more. But let me know if you're picking one up in the comments below. It's been a long time since we had the original iPad. This is so huge and pretty heavy, and it's incredible to see how far Apple's come. So let me know if you have an original iPad, if you ever used one, or what your first iPad was in the comments below. Of course, I'll link these new wallpapers, the iPad Pro wallpaper that actually says Pro here if you look at it, and then the iPad Air wallpaper as well. I'll link both of them in the description below. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.